Okay, good evening everyone and welcome to this IRTE Ireland North webinar in association with Bridgestone Tyres. I'm Jeff Shaw, IRTE Ireland North Committee Member and Transport Manager for Ards and North Down Council. Tonight's webinar will be presented by Conor Curran and Andrew Boyce from Bridgestone. Conor and Andrew will be discussing the new Juravis tyre range and what the future holds with regards to environmental legislation. We'll do a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. If you want to ask a question, please use the chat box at the top of your screen. Can you all please ensure that your microphones are turned off and your videos turned off? And now I'll hand over to Conor and Andrew for the presentation.
Very good. Thank you very much, Jeff, and thanks for the opportunity to present and welcome everybody. Myself and Andrew are in Belfast and we're here in the Titanic Hotel. We're presenting from the telephone exchange. And in the telephone exchange, they first received news that the Titanic had hit an iceberg in 1912. I hope something like that doesn't happen tonight. I hope everything runs smoothly here. But tonight's presentation essentially is to introduce the new developments with Bridgestone Tyres and the relationship between Bridgestone, the new Juravis tyre, and the regulation on emissions, with specific reference to VECTO, which is the Vehicle Energy Consumption Calculation Tool. So I suppose everybody knows Bridgestone. We're the world's largest tyre and rubber manufacturer, and we provide tyres, supply tyres to all of these household names. In particular, I'd like to mention myself and Andrew's section is dealing with TBR, truck and bus radials, like for the likes of Volvo trucks, MAN, Scania, etc. And like a lot of these fancy names here, like Ferrari, I visited the Bridgestone test track in Italy, but unfortunately anytime I've been there's been no Aston Martin or Ferrari for me. It's always been an MAN or a Volvo FH tractor unit traveling around the track, but still well worth a visit. So what we're going to talk about tonight is essentially the Juravis or 002 tyres, steer drive and trailer, and why we have actually launched these tyres and why they're in the marketplace. These tyres, a bit of shameless advertising here, they boast boosted wear, reduced rolling resistance, which is essentially what we're actually going to be talking about tonight, and excellent A-grade wet grip in the steer, and they're an absolutely fantastic innovation for us. But why have we done it? Why launch Juravis? Why change? And it's all about this little green logo here at the bottom of the screen, the Vehicle Energy Consumption Calculation Tool. Bit of a mouthful, but I'll get to that in a second. In Europe, UK and EU, road transport is still the main way that we have of transporting goods from our factories or farms into the household or into the end user. Poland is the largest road user, road transport, freight transport in the UK, EU, and they've really increased in 2021 so far this year by 9% on their 2019 figures. I think we can all agree that 2020 was a bit of a wipeout, but all of the main countries, including the UK and Ireland, make up part of this road freight statistic. And with the fact that none of the countries in Europe are investing in rail transport or heavy goods rail transport, road transport is the way we are going to get these goods around Europe for the foreseeable future. And foreseeable future, I mean decades, not just the next few years. And in the case of the regulations and the regulatory context with the EU and UK, you can see by this fairly busy graph or chart here, on the top line, the two top squares are really about the tyre regulations, and the two bottom squares are about vehicle regulations. And as you can see here on the left of the screen, in tyres, we really had regulations like the REACH regulations about hazardous materials been used in tyre manufacture. Then in 2012, with the introduction of the noise and the label gradings. But for trucks, with regard to emissions, we only had Euro 5 in 2010 and Euro 6 in 2014. And moving right along to 2019, in the middle of the graph, you can see that things get a hell of a lot more busier now and in the next few years. RFID was introduced in 2019, which is radio frequency identification. Every new tyre that's manufactured in Europe has to have RFID, every new truck and bus tyre. In 2021, this year, three-peak mountain snowflake becomes mandatory in Germany, Sweden and France. Then going on and on, we'll have new labels. But in vehicles at the bottom, you can see it gets very, very busy. VECTO was introduced, the reference period was introduced in 2019, and the full regulations for measuring emissions started in 2020. And then in 2022, next year, we have Eurovignette, which is emission-based highway tolls. Again, how they're going to monitor this and how it's going to be measured, we don't know, but it's been introduced that essentially if it costs €6 to go around the periphery in Paris, if you're driving an economical vehicle or an economical truck that is satisfying VECTO regulations, it may be cheaper for you in the future. So we can see moving along here to 2025, VECTO really comes into play, and we have to have 15% reduction in CO2 emissions for 16-ton vehicles by 2025 and another 15 by 2030. That's a 30% reduction in CO2 by 2030, excuse me. So with the tire development end of things, we have concentrated on, Bridgestone decided that we have to face up to this. We have to design tires that are going to satisfy these regulations. And in 2019, we introduced Duravis. And along with our Acopia tires, they feature RFID, Tree Peak Mountain Snowflake, and they start to satisfy the CO2 emission guidelines for VECTO. Going forward, what that meant for us in the evolution, tying in with the evolution trends in commercial vehicles, we found that the mega trends in design for the OEMs was truck manufacturers were looking at increased urbanization and more people moving to the cities. Night deliveries in cities would then become hugely important, and also an increased focus on the environment. The UK and EU plan for low CO2 mobility by 2030 was basically embraced after David Cameron's government introduced it in the EU Parliament, and a full team of experts in transport got together and designed or formulated the VECTO legislation. And this year in the UK, in January in the UK, Jesse Norman in the Johnson government ratified that legislation, and it is now UK law as well. And then the European Tyre Rubber Manufacturers Association bought into this and decided that they were going to actually go along with this and approve and endorse reduced rolling resistance in truck tires up until 2030. So we're going to be seeing things like mega trucks, more electric vehicles on the road, autonomous vehicles in the future, and legislation to platoon vehicles. Our tractor units and trailers going to be heading out in platoons at a certain time in the morning or the evening, and that sort of thing. So with tires, what we had to do was we had to concentrate on, for the electric vehicles, the likes of high torque. For city vehicles, they had to be silent, they had to be carry heavier loads because those batteries in the electric vehicles weigh a ton. We had to go rolling resistance, look at achieving an A grade and beyond, so strive for that. With RFID, go for connectivity. Can the tyre speak to the telematics in the vehicle? Can the tyre also send information on tread depth characteristics, pressure characteristics to ensure continuous mobility? And finally, of course, we have to get a tyre that lasts, because nobody wants to be changing their tyre every 2 months. So we had to concentrate on all these things. And as such, we looked at the environment, and everybody knows this lady, Greta Thunberg, the headline figure. You either like her or you don't like her. She's like a bit like Marmite. But when we were Bridgestone, we're looking at things, we were looking at the world is essentially, there's hundreds of websites out there that are looking at weather statistics and global warming statistics. But the one thing we had to accept was that the government bodies in the UK and the EU were facing up to the fact that we had to reduce CO2 and we had to face up to global warming as an absolute fact. And as a result of that, the vehicle energy consumption calculation tool, VECTO, was introduced. You'll be happy to know that there's about 183 pages in the regulation. I've just plagiarized a few of them for this presentation, but that basically is, you can read 7 times faster than I can talk, and that will tell you exactly what it is. It's a simulation tool, and it calculates the fuel consumption, carbon dioxide, and energy consumption of a newly manufactured vehicle. So the VECTO background is essentially the European and UK legislative bodies came to the decision that heavy vehicles were responsible for 30% of the greenhouse gas emissions. They came up with VECTO, introduced VECTO, and in May 2014 the project started, and they decided that there would be a measuring time, which was May 2019 to June 2020, and they would measure the current statistics and emissions of the vehicles, and then they would set a target. The timeline for it would be that it would be 4x2 and 6x2 tractor units and rigids over 16 tonne, and that reference period would be essentially, July 2019. So to June the 30th, 2020, and the target then, whatever was in the reference period, would have to be reduced by 15% by 2025. Again, looking at the bottom, trailer VECTO is going to come in and going to be introduced as legislation in 2023. So we have to keep an eye out for that. And there will be something on this for lighter vehicles as well, and light truck in the future. The big kicker on VECTO, and the big issue with VECTO, and why we have to pay, and why Bridgestone have paid a lot of attention to this, is if, for instance, the target is missed by 10 grams of CO2 in the measuring period, there will be a tariff of €4,250, or the equivalent GBP amount per gram of CO2 on that OEM if they miss the target. So essentially, if the manufacturer, MAN, Mercedes, DAF, Renault, Scania missed the target, a tractor unit could go up in price by 42.5 grand, or that's €36,553.06 at today's exchange rate. And then if we don't hit the target from 2030 onwards, the tariff goes up to €6,800, or the equivalent GBP per gram. So everybody is working towards reducing CO2 emissions, but thank you, OEMs, they have told Bridgestone that the Tyre is responsible for 65% of this target. So whether they work on aerodynamic drag or regeneration from the engine, gearbox, etc., tyres are still the main the main item that will give you that reduced rolling resistance coefficient. So they've put it on us, and hence we have designed Giravis, which is a regional tyre which will give you that saving, and will ensure in 2015 we don't look at tractor units going up by 40 grand essentially. So when Bridgestone looked at this, we decided, and we made a careful decision looking at it, that we would have to be on board of this. This was the future. We couldn't stick with our old products. We couldn't stick in the past. We didn't want to be like some of these companies. We all remember them. People that didn't embrace the future, didn't embrace digital technology, the Polaroid camera, the Nokia. Everyone remembers their brick phone. Sometimes I wish I still had my Nokia brick phone. I tell you, the battery would last a hell of a lot longer. But Nokia made a decision not to embrace smart technology, and as a result, they're no longer a company. They're no longer in business, and we didn't want to be a part of that. So our technology roadmap for the future took into mind the end user, the people that are driving these trucks and buying these trucks, the original equipment manufacturer, and also the ecosystem. So when we look at designing a tyre now, like Giravis, we design it with rolling resistance coefficient in mind first, not leaving off safety in any way, shape or form. We go for the wet grip and safety number 2. And then we also keep in mind noise, because we will be going into electric vehicle and night delivery vehicles in the future. So you'll be happy to know, I'll hand over to Andrew now, and Andrew will give you a few facts on Giravis, and also on some of the innovations within Giravis, and also about the circular economy that we can bring to the table on this. Thank you, Andrew.
Okay, thank you very much, Conor. Just going to run through a few slides. The first one on the new Giravis tyre. Completely new generation of tyre from Bridgestone, and really to put all the eggs into this, really everything's gone into the Giravis. The old tyres, those are familiar with them, the M729 was, to be quite honest, a legendary tyre in the drive tyre. More or less done away with now, and that's because, as Conor was saying, about the fuel ratings in the future. And the Giravis, really, the testing has been extensive. 126 fleets across Europe, and we had extensive testing in Ireland, north and south, in the UK. We had Loan Transport, was one of our local companies, tested a lot of tyres, and our own technical team from Balbriggan was heavily involved in all the data capturing and over a year's worth of testing. So the tyre has been proven on many different surfaces and countries as well. Very significant is the TÜV rating. The 31580 steer, A and wet grips, so we just pipped all the competition on that, and that really helps the Giravis become one of the top tyres on the OE spec equipment list for OEM manufacturers. So as Conor mentioned, many of the top manufacturers, Volvo, are all speccing these tyres. Going on the range of tyres, the B is the lowest steer rating, C in the trailer, and also B, or C in the drive, B in the trailer. And fuel rating is very, very important. Bear in mind the 729 was an E-graded tyre. This could save up to 30% on a fleet cost in fuel. And if you really want to save fuel, we have a complete different range, the Ecopia, and it is a star fuel saver, AAA ratings for steer, drive and trailer, so it's a big energy saver. Now you're wondering on the Giravis, how do we do this? How do you get similar mileage and save on fuel as well? And that's come with a lot of spending. It's basically the high grade and better distributed qualities of the silica within the tread compound. And the technical term for that is lowers the hysteresis loss, which basically means there's less friction within the compound of the tyre, reduces the rolling resistance while retaining the mileage performance. And how that is done is the high grade silica is a difficult process, but using the latest generation of literally multi-million pound tandem mixers, which were first used in the car tyres with Bridgestone. They developed these for the new Giravis truck tyres, and that's how we're getting the particles and the silica better distributed, so that's what's giving the extra wear in that. Now another nice piece of technology is the radio frequency identification chip in the side of the tyre. Now really this is going to be the passport for your tyre for the future. For compliance is the key word. And as Conor said, in 2019, all the tyres have been fitted. The discussion is ongoing as to what can be taken off the radio frequency chip. Certainly at this stage, all the data about the tyre specification, the labelling, where the tyre is manufactured, all that basic information easily taken off, easily accessed. There are discussions between manufacturers and government bodies what else we can do with it. The VECTO legislation ties in with this. They are looking in at having tariffs on toll bridges where they can read the chip in the tyre with a reader, and if you're below the C on the fuel grade, you would pay more to get to the next toll. Anybody that's been on holiday in France, and I've been through France myself, tolls are expensive to start off with, so having a lower graded fuel resistance tyre could be very, very expensive. The interaction too in the future could be with web fleet solutions. Bridgestone made a huge investment 2 years ago to purchase TomTom, rebranded web fleet solutions. 910 million euro was the cost of that purchase. And we feel that there could be monitoring with the chip, temperatures in the tyre and different data off the tyre, but that's currently in development and a lot of things in that. Another thing Conor touched upon, 3-peak mud and snow rating, and really this has become more of an industry standard. A lot of countries winter tyres are mandatory and partially mandatory, and we reckon the UK could impose this seasonally as well, so this could be coming in. The old M&S rating was a traditional rating, mud and snow for tyres, but we've found over the years been watered down. A lot of Chinese imports and different tyres have basically just stamped M&S in the tyre, and there's been very little regulation to monitor this. Our tyres are very heavily monitored, 3-peak mud and snow. We have a particular fleet who actually does a lot of delivering of windmills into Norway, and they are very particular about fitting the 3-peak mud and snow tyres before going, because their drivers frequently get stopped at checkpoints, and it's one of the things to check for, and one of the things you can be fined for as well. A couple of tips on the sidewall labelling. So here to your right here, this is where you'll see the RFID chip actually located on the Giravis tyre. And on the left, just the main brand Giravis. Now Giravis is Latin for strength and power, so that gives you an idea of that. A few bits about Giravis. All tyres must satisfy the regulations. This tyre will do this. Tyre life is important, as we explained, and also the fuel saving as well with the rolling resistance. Now, we have an example here. Take, for example, this typical tractor unit, 31570s on the front, super singles on the trailer, doing about 200,000 kilometres a year. So for this example, say it was doing 10 miles per gallon, and to make it simple, the fuel is £1 a litre. I wish it was at this stage, but the annual fuel cost for that whole drag would be £56,500. By changing from a D rating, that is on fuel, just one rating onto the C, the calculation would show a £2,400 roughly saving on fuel. If it was going to a B rated tyre on the whole setup, £5,000. So there's money to be saved here. The cost of a tyre to the average fleet is 5%, whereas fuel is 30 to 35%. So the two things need to work together, and the fuel cost is massive to any fleet as well. Now, leading the charge in reducing CO2, this is all related. So going to save fuel, you save CO2. And the other thing you can do also is fit in retread tyres, and that's another way of reducing the CO2 emissions with the circular economy. So Bridgestone purchased Bandag many years ago, and it's really our partner in retreading and a brilliant partner as well. It's a safe, cost-effective, environmentally friendly retread solution and supports the transition towards a circular economy. 60 years experience, dedication to reliability, delivers the mileage, performance comparable to premium tyres, but reducing your total tyre cost per kilometres. You've less raw materials, carbon emissions, so it helps reduce your environmental footprint as well. So basically, what is good for your business can also be good for your environment here as well. A few things about the retreads, actually facts here. 70% less oil used to manufacturing process with the retread. 80% less carbon dioxide emissions to reduce the retread. So again, you're saving the environment in that. 14 kilograms typically less steel in each tyre when you're reusing the casings. And also a few facts aren't on this. 90% less water used in production, 21% less air pollution is measured, and actually 29% less soil erosion in areas where rubber is grown. You're not putting as much demand on natural rubber, and that's becoming a key factor in the tyre industry at the minute. 70% less raw material in general, and 65% less energy to actually make the tyre. So, you know, you're saving on costs and also the environment. The patterns, the Girabus patterns available in the retread now, the L355, the M series, which is on off-road tyre, very popular in retread. The BDU2, very common, popular waste tyre. And we've also introduced a new curbing band that we're in right now. So that's going to revolutionise things as well. And just to give you an example of retread, TransLink, one of the top companies here, top fleets, does all the buses and public transport, very heavily use the Bandag retreads with us, and really works very well for them. Myths on retreads, they're not like the retreads produced in the 1980s in car tyres where there was problems. People think they're not safe, they don't perform as well, and this thing about rubber pieces, probably more likely to come from a cheaper tyre altogether. Just like the new tyres, treads are vulcanized, casings are not glued. The bonding's very strong. They meet all the quality standards, which is ISO 9000. Every casing has a detailed inspection process as well. And it's very much using high-tech equipment and our current tested and tried and tested treads. So that's my sort of spiel on the technical side of things. I'm just going to hand back to Connor to conclude.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Andrew. So just again, thank you to the IRTE, Jeff and the team for setting this short webinar up. It was brilliant to get a chance to talk to you about this. I suppose really what we want to reiterate to everybody is when the tyre manufacturers, and it's not only Bridgestone, but when people design tyres, they design them for a reason. And with axle weights increasing, vehicle power units changing more towards hybrid or more towards, if you look at electric vehicles in city, we do it for a reason. And the likes of VECTO guides us in that design process, and there's a good reason behind it. We don't just design a tyre for the sake of it. We design it for specific reasons, and it's really proved to be a success for us introducing Duravis. Myself and Andrew spoke to a few of the OEMs in the past week as we were preparing for this webinar, and we heard things like 90% specification of Giravis, 75% specification of Giravis from another one, 85% from another one. So you see, we have a very high specification because it achieves that VECTO grade of BCB on the rolling resistance. So guys, thank you very much. We're here for questions. I hope we can answer them. I hope that you enjoyed this short presentation. I'll hand you back to Jeff now, and we'll open it up for any questions.
Sorry, thank you very much, Conor. Thank you very much, Andre. We have first question come in there. Is the tread made from synthetic rubber rather than natural rubber?
Go ahead.
Yeah, the tread would be mainly natural rubber in it. You know, we are experimenting with synthetics at the moment, but yeah, you're right, natural rubber.
Okay. The RFID tags, can a operator have access to the data on the RFID tags?
We're in the process of, looking at that with different governments and things. There's actually quite a lot of GDPR issues with that, that they're trying to see. For example, if you were to walk into a fleet and you had a reader to read an RFID chip, it's okay for us to read our Bridgestone tyres, but is it okay for another competitor to come in and read our chip and get information of it? So there's quite a lot, I believe, in parliaments across Europe and in the EU. They're trying to discuss what is legally allowed to come off these chips and what fleets want. Certainly there's development ongoing, as to what we can do with it, particularly in heat technology and things, but we're not just there yet. That's why we're at the very early stage of what can be taken off it.
There's another question there. Can the RFID tag be copied or cloned? It would have to be, I think every manufacturer is now, because since 2019, all new tyres manufactured in Europe have to have an RFID chip. I think all the manufacturers will have their own chips. So you would have to dig fairly deep into the casing to get the RFID chip out. Could the technology be copied? At this stage, yes, it could, is the straight answer. But the information that's on it at the moment would be production line, date of production, dot code, load and speed index, serial number, that sort of thing. What can go on the chip in the future is limitless, what you can put on it. The information could be the fleet name, fleet vehicle registration number, etc., just to identify the carcass and the casing. Our presentation slides available for future reference? Yes, absolutely. We've committed to the team at the IRTE that we'll share the presentation and give them to the guys.
One come in here about annual testing. Do you believe it should include checking of tyre conformity designs, tread patterns? Well, we probably could, yes. I think really one of the regulations that's been recently is the dot code on the tyre. Particularly older aged tyres that I think you have to carefully check them for cracks and things. And I think a lot of the old-fashioned way of inspections should be looked at. Particularly on a real thorough inspection of the tyre sidewall for any damage, penetrations on it, cracks in the casings, any doziness in the sidewall. It all needs to be a balance between common sense and regulations. Nobody likes loads of regulations, and we're the same ourselves, and we don't want to live in a world of all regulations. So it has to be a mixture of common sense and regulations. Certainly tyres, I do believe, need to be checked. Conformity is very important in certain countries. You just will not pass your testing related to age on your mud and slow flake. And look, it's got to be the right thing, I suppose, for safety of road users.
Are there any additional costs with disposal? Not that we're aware of. The RFID chip won't impact on that. It's a tiny chip, and there's so many materials in tyres at the moment that I don't think it would be add anything to the cost of disposal, which is a very controversial topic at the moment, disposal charges, and I don't think that would come into it. Could operators in the DVSA be given a basic chip reader? I think that is the future. That is definitely the future. That they will be given this, and if the VECTO, like Jesse Norman signed it in the legislation into the UK law in January, could it be a case that going down the road in 24 months, could we be looking at legislation to look at, you pass your tests, your VRT test, your vehicle test, with by having the tyres that were supplied OE? That'd be great for us. Be great for some of the premium manufacturers, but I don't know how it would work out, because it would be kind of against the free market. But then again, it's something that we could see in the future. Will the RFID tag be transferred onto retreads or remolded tyres? Yes. It's heat resistant and tested to be retreaded multiple times. So if a Duravis tyre or a Copia tyre goes for retreading, the RFID tyre will still be readable after the retreading process.
Will the 10-year age rule still apply with Duravis tyres? I would think that just applies blanket across any tyre, to be quite honest, no matter what it is. I think that rule will apply. Yes. I would hope that you would get 10 years out of them. Would be nice now, But yeah, hopefully you can get close to that anyway.
There's a few, I'd like to say they'd last 10 years, but there's a few lads on here I know that know a bit about tyres, so I'm not going to chance that one.
The thing about again with the watchwords being sustainability, environmentally friendly, Duravis seems to be heading in the right direction. And it is actually a scary thought that there's a possibility for 68 grand increase in the tractor unit come 2030 if somebody's 10 grams over the sea levels. So, definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Have we any more questions? Okay, don't seem to have any more questions coming in, guys. Look, thank you very much for taking your time to present this webinar for us. And thank you everyone for joining us. The webinar will be available, it has been recorded, and will come up on the website shortly.
Great, and we'll share the slides during the week with you, Jeff, so you can disseminate them to the team.
Okay,
thank you, everybody. Yeah,
thanks for attending, and really appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, cheers. Thank you very much. Night, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.